Welcome everybody to another episode of Outwired. Super excited to be here. Man, that was like God, he was like, was he there? Was Greg there? Like, I think he was just there late for the show.
I'm like a ghost. No, I'm here. What do you mean?
What
Well,
happened?
here, all
What happened
right.
to your
Right,
audio,
Am?
man? Like,
Can
what
you hear
happened?
me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, the audio just didn't want to cooperate. Sunspots or the plate in my head. I don't know what it is, but little interference. So
All right. Well, do you actually have a plate in your head?
uh, it's better for the joke if you don't ask questions, but no, I don't. I don't have a plate in my
Well,
head.
fuck. I'm sorry, man.
That's all
Like,
right. That's not something you should
you
be
could have
sorry
just
for. It's the
you
other
could
way
have
around.
just taken a handicap there.
I could have.
So
You're right.
like, yeah, like that's why I
Take a
have
moment.
to step up to the. Is it the red tea or which one's the ladies' tea?
I think
Not the
we
ladies are any
derailed.
worse than golf, to be clear. Like,
That's right.
like I think every
That's
woman
right.
on the planet's better than me at golf. So, okay. So, welcome to another episode of Outwired. I got like my whiskey today. I was going to drink a normal whiskey, and then I was talking about Scott was on the show earlier. We were talking about Iceland. So, I still have this bottle from 2 years ago that I brought back home through customs from Iceland. It's called Floki. I don't know if you can see it over there. Some kind of
Nice.
camera, yeah. And it's Icelandic single malt whiskey that is distilled in sheep dung.
Oh yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's very delicious. It's very
I'm
delicious,
sure.
despite how it sounds. So I figured I'd drink a thing of that. So I guess let's start off with our normal thing for the week. What have you guys come across your desks in the last 7 days that we want to talk about?
On my side, it's more people buying and building campgrounds. I know I said that last week, but it just keeps going.
Did you say
I'm
it last week? I kind of don't pay attention to you. I
I
mean,
might have said it last week. I feel like I'm saying it a lot because that's what I'm seeing more of.
yeah.
Just kind of surprised by it with I don't know if buyers see the financials from last year as an opportunity because parks were down a little bit, so maybe the valuations are down, but parks are down a little bit. I mean, that would slow me down. That would make me more cautious for sure. But no, I've got calls from people buying and building from all across the country, from Kentucky to Alaska.
Do you
So really interesting.
do you think that it's because people overbuilt and are now distressed and need to sell at lower prices, or are we like I feel like we're almost not there yet. Like we will be.
That's not what I'm. No, that's not what I'm seeing. In fact, most of the stuff I'm seeing is builds, and those folks I think maybe are they're coming in a tad late to the game, right? Everybody, it was really hot there for a little while
Yeah.
after COVID 21 and 22. But I mean, the market's still good. And it's a fairly, as we've covered on the show, it's a fairly evergreen industry. So,
Yeah, as long as you're
I'm
not building
happy
in
for
the
people.
Texas corridor between Austin and Dallas or whatever. Is that what yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of parks in there, but I don't know what, and I hear the term saturation thrown around a lot. I don't know what that looks like.
It looks
I
like
know that
the
if I
corridor between Austin and Dallas is what it looks like.
potentially,
Yeah.
I know that I feel like, and maybe Scott as well, since he's in the consulting space, I feel like I could move to Texas, pick a central location, so I'm within 9 hours of the far reaches of the state because it's massive,
Yeah.
and I probably never have to leave the state for consulting work. There are just so many parks being purchased or flipped or built in the state of Texas. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity down there, but
But how does this play out, right? Like I know there are for sure opportunities in Texas to develop a park and to get
yeah,
business. There's no
yeah.
question about that. But also, like it feels like almost what you were saying, like is the business really going to be there in big enough numbers? Because I'm guessing most of these people are building luxury RV resorts, right?
You'd be surprised at how many people are scratching out hookups on really pretty pieces of like dirt in the Permian Basin and absolutely filling up with gas and
Well,
oil work.
those I
That's a
believe,
completely different model. That's a
yeah, those
completely
I
different
believe
model.
are really good. I think those will be strong as long as they have the story and the experience and the difference maker and all the things we've talked about on the show before, right? I think those are going to be fine because if you're in a down economy, people tend to skew more towards like budgetary travel, but nicer travel, and then they have the best of both worlds being a new development, right? It's
Yeah,
the oversaturation of luxury that concerns me more than anything.
yeah, and a lot of that going on in Arizona and Florida too. But it doesn't seem to be. Folks are building these really high end RV pads, selling them for 175 to 275,000 each, and then forming HOAs to operate the park on
Well,
maintenance.
that's a different thing, right? So that's like,
But they're being bought up like hotcakes. I can't get over it, and that's one again. Going
the
over
the
saturation.
individual sites are being bought up, you're saying?
Yes, yeah, they're selling them
Yeah.
outright. And
Okay.
Scott's nodding his head. You seeing this too, right, Scott?
Yep, absolutely.
Who's buying them, though?
Snowbirds that want to know they have a really kick-ass little spot to go back to every single year.
Okay, I mean,
And
that makes sense to me, especially because and I'm not saying this is the result of what's happening, but it's similar to like you're seeing the surge in everybody trying to buy cars right now before the tariffs go into effect,
yes,
right?
yep.
Is it a similar thing in the hopes that the real estate will continue to appreciate?
I don't know, because I don't know that they gain from the appreciation. Scott, do you have anything on that? I don't know if they can sell that off at the appreciated value.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in that area, but I do hear about this a lot.
Yeah,
It's come up a lot more. In fact, yeah, just recently we've had several people talk about like three scenarios: park development, or basically, building lots, luxury lots, and three is come in, get everything permitted, all set up, and then flipping it.
I mean,
and that's that latter one is the one that I'm seeing more, because a developer can come in, build this giant part. It costs them a fortune, right? But then if you sell 500 lots at $250,000, that's a pretty nice payday, right? That's a big chunk of change, and the developer can be out, and the operator can take over and run it on those HOA maintenance fees. And in some cases, the owners can even choose to allow the operator to sublet that lot when they're not on it and get a portion of that revenue.
I mean,
So it's an interesting model.
And it does make sense from putting your money to work, right? Because we've talked about on the
Mhm.
show before the devaluation of the money supply and printing and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff and inflation. And so it does make sense to like rather than have that sit in the bank or a stock market that appears to be underperforming or whatever, the uncertainty with even the dollar going up and down because of different policies that like real estate obviously is viewed as one of the, if not the most stable, tangible asset, physical asset, right? That has existed. I mean, I guess gold counts as a physical asset. That's why I was saying that. But like, so gold and real estate, right?
Anyway, enough about me. What about Scott?
Yeah,
I'm taking all the attention.
That's okay. Yeah. What about me? I think for me, what's been happening this year, and I'm trying to, kind of get my head around it, is that, we talk a lot about what is going on out there in terms of how people are viewing, their travel, and the guests and what they're doing. And I will say that from a business perspective, the year started off like very optimistically. Like we had so much stuff coming in, we were wondering how we were going to do it all. And I would say at this point, maybe half of those have come to fruition. The rest have been put on hold.
Okay.
And that happened to, kind of again this week, and it's not like people are, and I know that they're not even going out shopping. They're just taking a wait and see approach, and it feels like, I've always said in my industry, you can kind of see what's coming based on who comes to you for work. Like back in the day, like if when I used to subcontract with a different company, and if we did some work with financial services organizations. If a bunch of them would start coming to us looking for work, we'd be like, watch out. Watch out. Things are getting ready to take a dive here. And overall in research, it's one of the things that people kind of cut back on, and they evaluate whether or not they really need it, or if they can really afford it at this time. So I'm not saying, and I'm not saying this as gloom and doom at all. I'm just saying it as it feels like there's a lot of waiting and seeing going on. And
finish, please.
And so anyway, that was kind of the thing that really struck me over the past week. I've had really good conversations with people, even the people who are on hold. But it normally isn't like that. Usually, by the time someone comes to us and asks, it happens within a couple weeks, probably.
What do we have a sense of? Because this is something that's always interested me, right? Like I've been, as with many people, like even like the JP Morgan CEO has been saying like we're going to go into a recession for like 2 years, and then he's always wrong, and everybody's wrong, and everybody's not understanding why the consumer continues to spend and where they're getting all the money from, and on and on and on and on and on. Is there like what is the point here where business owners start to lay off people? Like they have started, right? But in numbers that people notice that will impact travel plans because and I'm not saying I don't know that we're close to that or far away from that or if it will ever happen, but as I look at consumer sentiment and as I continue to decline, as I look at potential tariffs that will impact the economy in one way or another, as I look at less Canadian spending, as I look at the Atlanta Fed now saying GDP might be down 2.4% in quarter one, is there a trigger for the standard Main Street business owner, not the big corps who are already paying attention to this, right? Where they say like, maybe I don't need 3 people in my bakery. Maybe I need 2. Like, is there like how much can they take before that decision becomes of importance?
That is a really deep and convoluted question. So I think Scott should answer it.
I mean, I don't know that there's an answer, right? But it feels like I've been in cost cutting mode for a year, but I've mostly just been in cost cutting from software, not people. Just things that were nice to have that I don't need to have anymore. But like there must be a point where worry and concern comes into the mind of the small business owner enough to say, let me take a look at my books.
Yeah, for sure. And the problem is that lag that comes in. And I know, Scott, you were going to say something. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
No, I actually wasn't.
I think, okay. I think you're probably better suited to answer that. But that is such a deep and
let me tell you why I bring it up, right? Because this is what I think part of the uncertainty is. And so I think where this happens, if it happens, could dramatically impact the amount of people who will go camping this year and travel.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's go ahead, Scott.
No, it feels to me that, it's kind of like what we talk about. We talked about a couple of weeks ago anyway, kind of macroeconomic, but also the idea of consumer sentiment and how sentiment drives a lot of what's going on. And I think for that business owner, that's where they're at too. It's like, where does the sentiment meet the books, as you just mentioned a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Like it's like, I'm not feeling it and the books are reinforcing it. I think it takes that combination of, what's the critical cutoff? We don't know. I feel like a lot of people are gonna, this year seems like there's going to be a lot of waiting and seeing, as I said, and I think that's going to come on with the owners as well, and what they're looking at. I think there's ways to recoup, and there's sometimes things happen differently, and you never know.
Well, for sure they're going to happen differently than we expect, right? But is the waiting and seeing based on hope, or is it based on logic, or is it based on data, or like that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is it I hope that it will get better because either I believe in the changes that are making and I expect them to be fixed in 6 months? Is it hope that like some of the stuff won't happen if you disagree with it? Or is it like that's because all the data I'm seeing is not fucking good. Like data wise, statistic wise, right? Not saying that that's what I believe.
Correct. No, I would agree that right now the data says that we're not doing that great. And there's, until someone comes up with a plan that says this is how we're going to make this better, that's probably where we're going to be.
Yep. And it's so hard to measure. What you're talking about is measuring
Right.
emotion and reaction, right? And like Scott said, sentiment, like how it's almost impossible to measure it. But I can tell you that park operators north of the Mason-Dixon, like up here where I'm at, and where you only get your 6-month season typically, they're going to tell you by the end of June, right? Because they're all going to have that first holiday under their belt. They're going to be headed into July 4th. They're going to have a nice little forecast for that first part of their season, or look back at the first part of their season.
Right. But they're not
And
going
they're
to
all
lay off a bunch of people for the rest of their season, right? Like,
potentially, if that occupancy, if that demand isn't
well,
there,
that's
yeah.
fair. Like, but
Yeah.
what worries me more is the people who would go camping not having money to go camping,
Yep.
or
And that we
being
may
so
feel
uncertain that they won't, right? Whatever.
right. And we'll see what happens as the government layoffs continue. Government's the biggest employer, I think, in the country, right? Am I wrong about that? I'm pretty sure the government is the largest employer of people in the country, and they're laying off tens of thousands of workers right now. And that's supposed to continue. That's going to be I feel like that's going to be a tangible effect on the economy. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know. It's an interesting viewpoint.
I mean, eventually this will lead us into our discussion of prepping for the season, which is why I'm kind of staying with this just for a little bit. But yeah, it just doesn't, like, we're all three business owners here, right? And from my perspective, yes, I perhaps obsessively follow the data more than many small business owners do. But like, I don't know, like I'm not sitting here waiting. And so I'm just wondering what that point is, and I don't think there's a good answer that we're ever going to get to, right? Like, but it feels like if I was a business owner and I looked at my books and said, if there's maybe a way I could get rid of a person or a piece of software or an extra thing that costs me money, or lower my cost to have my, I don't know, sheets washed at my campground to a vendor that's maybe a little slower but a little cheaper. It feels like the people who will make it through this the easiest are already considering those things.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say the savvy owners are doing that every year anyway, right? Every year they close right before they open, whichever one it is. They're reevaluating all of those contracts, all of those staffing levels. Even the really savvy ones are reevaluating their SOPs. How can we firm these things up, make them more efficient? How can we make the park run better, faster, stronger, cheaper, with the same experience level for the guest? So, yeah, I think you're right. I think the savvy ones are already doing it.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about my thing that came across my desk real quick. It's going to be super geeky, and I'll try to explain it to you guys. I don't have a video to share or anything. And then we'll move into the prepping for the campground stuff, right? Because I want to hear from Greg first about operational stuff, and then we'll tail end it with some data stuff, and we'll introduce our new friend here in a sec too. No, you're not the new friend, Jessica. Well, I mean, technically you are a new friend, but like that's not who I was talking about. Okay, so the thing that came across my desk is something that you guys have probably never heard of. It's called MCP servers, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm going to dumb it down as much as I can. But all of you are familiar with ChatGPT, right? AI does a thing when you type it in the box. There's a thing that has been gaining popularity, and we've discussed it on the show before, called AI agents, and they do very different things depending on what you build them for. And so an AI agent is operator that we looked at that goes out and browses websites. An agent is deep research that goes out and performs multiple tasks to get to an answer and decides kind of the path it gets there a little bit autonomously, right? It uses tools is basically what an AI agent is. And so these have been able to be hacked together for a little bit of time. In other words, like there's a platform out there that we've played with before called N8N. That's like a Zapier. And you can basically take a brain of an AI agent that would decide what tools to use. And you can say, like, I want you to manage my Google Calendar, for example, just using something super simple, okay? To allow the agent to do that, you would have to connect every function of your Google Calendar independently all by itself. So the search the calendar, the add an event, the modify an event, the delete an event, like every individual action would have to be connected as a separate tool. So it was possible, but it was very cumbersome. You had to set up each one individually. It took you like hours and hours to set up the stuff just for one function, and so on and so forth. But in November of 2024, Anthropic, I think is how you pronounce it. But Claude, I know how to pronounce that, released a standard called MCP, and it's called Model Context Protocol. And what it basically is a standard for AIs to talk to tools. It's extremely simplifying this, right? And it's really caught fire over the last few months, and then OpenAI announced that they were going to support this MCP standard as well. So it's going to become the de facto standard with how basically AIs like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever interact with tools. Basically how they're going to get things done for us in the real world, okay? And what it allows you to do is basically just connect Google Calendar, and it will allow there to be a set standard of ways that the AI can talk to Google Calendar so that it's always up to date, it always knows the tools it has available, always knows what it can do in Google Calendar. It can do everything that you can do through Google's functionality for that, right? And you don't have to ever edit it again. You just have to give it access to Google Calendar, if that makes sense, right? Like authorizing it in, I don't know, a software program or something like that.
And then it's able to discern those steps, those
What
other
it needs
tools
to
that it
do.
has.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Oh my
So
gosh.
the agent could do that before, but it had to discern between just the add, get, and all the functions you added. Now it can discern from Google Calendar or any of the other individual apps you have. Like you could do that in the past, but you can just connect more. It's like, think of it like a funnel, right? So at the bottom of the funnel is all your like add, get individual items. Then a little bit further up the funnel is just the apps themselves. So Google Calendar or YouTube or Airbnb or whatever it is, right? And so that's where we're at with MCP now. And now they're building a brain to MCP. That's like an example was MCP Compass, but it's just like an open source. Like nobody's saying that's going to be the standard. But they're building like a navigator on top of those apps to then decide which apps so it's going further up the funnel. So at some point in the next couple of months, you're just going to have an app that can decide like what tools it needs to connect and then what tools it needs to, and so this is where it's going, right? This is how the agentic revolution comes, where it can operate and do anything on the computer, is you just connect your Microsoft account and then it instantly has access to Excel and Docs and all the right, everything you need. And so this is fascinating to me. Like this is how we're going to start to build some agentic experiences in the future. But like a good example is, you all know Zapier?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Like Zapier just released their own MCP server, which basically means like you spin up an MCP server and you attach any tool that's in Zapier to it, and it can do anything that Zapier can have access to. And the AI can just decide, do I need this tool on Zapier? If it's connected, let me go use that to accomplish the goal in the direction and whatever I want to do. Spreadsheets, databases, calendars, emails, 9,000 apps that Zapier has access to, right? They're not all MCP compatible yet, but they're going to quickly be that way.
So let's say there's a I realize now I'm segueing into the next portion potentially. Maybe
That's
you're not
fine.
ready to.
I'm
It's just
done
dawning
anyway.
on me.
Yeah.
It's just dawning on me. Say there's a park owner out there right now, and he or she or they're getting ready for start of the season. Maybe they've got to get their guest list tidy up. They don't have they're not running a great PMS software. Maybe they're doing things manually. I don't know. What are some of the functions, like just even one that you can think of right off the top of your head that somebody would be able to take this Zapier, what did you call it? MCP?
Yeah, like there's
Right?
all kinds of MCP servers, right? Like Google has
Okay.
one, Airbnb has one there. It's very infancy. Like it's in its infancy, but we all know how fast AI is going. In
Yeah,
like
really
3
fast.
months, right?
So in
people
3
are gonna-
months, what do you see that being able to, like someone could sit down at their desk, go to it and spin up an AI that would help them do what you're saying? I could literally tell it to write my marketing emails for me and have
Yeah,
them
like
done.
Gmail will have an MCP server, and you'll be able to prompt an AI and say like, I need to send an email to Greg about this, and it'll be able to use your email and then also monitor for replies. That's a very, very basic example, right? But
Okay.
with Zapier, you're going to be able to have access to all the tools. So I don't know what happens in 3 months, because a lot of this requires programming. Like it's not just it's not in a consumer friendly package yet, which is why most
Okay.
people haven't noticed it. But in like I think I'm going to say less than 2 years and be ultra conservative, right? But I think probably less, before the end of 2025, you're going to have a situation where you can probably sit down as an owner, like let's say the 2026 season. Okay. Let's give it a full year from now. You'll be able to sit down and say, I need to prep my park for the season. And the AI will know that everything you can handle electronically or through a computer or through an API, whether that's monitoring and setting up wild energy pedestals, whether that's, creating spreadsheets or guest lists or analyzing past behavior or going out to do research on news that's happened that might impact economic forecasts for the park, or sending email blasts to let people know you're open for the season, or contacting the pool guy to know that you schedule your maintenance for the season. It's going to be able to do all that fucking shit. All that.
Not just remind you to do it.
Yeah. Actually be able to do it.
Physically do it.
Now, whether somebody builds a system that is good enough for campground owners that will integrate with the tools that they need to make that happen is an open question.
Well, you shouldn't have tipped your hand. We all know you're working on it now.
Well, I for sure I will, right? But that's what's happening. Like, and at that point, which is coming in a few months, where the technology will be good enough to do that, because everybody will get on board with this. Like, Airbnb's already got one where you can search listings, an MCP server of their own, right? And so you can give an agent access to multiple MCP servers. Zapier feels like the most powerful right now because it has so many apps already connected to its ecosystem, right? But you'll be able to connect a Zapier and a Google Calendar if you want, and a Gmail and an Airbnb and hundreds of other things, right? So the question is what companies from a campground perspective will be on board with this? Like, I feel like not many is the answer. Like, I'm not holding my breath for insert blank reservation system MCP server in the next year. I felt like I was going to throw out a company name, but I'm just not going to do that. But from any of them across the board, right? Sure. I'm not expecting that to happen. But we could technically build one with API access for a reservation system, right? And so that's the benefit of like a New Book or a CampSpot having the well built out APIs,
right? Is
we can build things for them without the reservation system waiting. And sometimes I'm sure they'll like that, and sometimes they won't like that. But either way, like, and that's the powerful system that you're looking forward to, right? The AI is going to be able to know all your history and about all your campground and look through all your finances and be connected. The MCP server can be connected to your QuickBooks account. It can be connected to your reservation data from last year. It can understand all the new, like, it's just going to, and the models that will be thinking through all that will be probably GPT-5 and maybe something even better than that by 2026. I expect GPT-5 to come out before May. And then it just, the logic that it'll be able to think through and use all those tools will be crazy. Like we had it do. You've seen comp analysis. This isn't an MCP server, but it's the same way. I was using the browser use to see if we could test building an agent to respond to reviews on sites that like Good Sam or something that don't have APIs. Yeah, no problem. Good. Just
there you go. So there's something that an owner, that would be incredibly valuable to an owner if they could spin up something like that.
Well, we can. Like we're building it. Like we're building it, right? But like a simple prompt that says like, go to Good Sam, log in with my username and password, go find my listing. Like, well, not even find my listing. Like for us, like we manage so many listings so the find listing was my point, right? Go manage my listing, go look for the review that's titled this. It can all be dynamic and pulled in. So like new review comes in, can be an alert, and it will have all the data to go search for, right? And then go find that review and then go write a response and publish it. And it will use the Good Sam website like you would. No API necessary, no new technology necessary. Like APIs are the best way to communicate with a website, but we've all been sitting here for 15 years waiting on, well, not all of us, but like people like me have been sitting here waiting on APIs forever. They're just not going to build them unless there's a financial incentive to build them.
Yeah. And
many campground owners don't want or need or have the technology to be able to do that.
Definitely.
But now that the use of the computer flips the game.
Got it.
So, that's all right. Anyway, let's transition to our actual thing. But that's, yeah. I love the way the world's going. It's going to be super fun to build, man. I'm excited. I'm like a fucking kid in a candy store.
Or a liquor store, actually.
Or a liquor store, yeah.
Looks more like a liquor store, frankly.
Yeah, this smells.
And I just have to ask because
smell this. It smells so good.
I don't want to smell sheep dung booze, but you did mention something before, and I got to tell you before we move on, just it's stuck in my head now. You kept saying it can talk to this tool, it can talk to this tool. And
Mhm.
I was wondering, does that mean that I can get it to talk to my neighbor, the jackass, like 5 houses down with the exhaust that rattles my windows, and he has to go down the street because I view him as a tool. So like every time you said it, I pictured being able to build something that could go talk to this moron and have him like just slow his roll at 5 in the morning when he was ripping
Yeah.
down the street at
I
85.
mean, you could do that now, right?
Not that kind of tool though. That's a different kind of tool.
Like how
I
much
think is
how
what
much
you're
is that worth to you? Like we could build a system right now to talk to the tool. The AI could use the tool to talk to the tool, if that's what you're referencing, right?
And then we'd have tool-to-tool communication, and that
Yeah.
might get through to him because I know we've had conversations and they're just not going anywhere. So,
But you could generally, like, you could actually spin up. So real quick, and then we'll get to our story. You could spin up. You could have an AI brain have access to tools that could create an agent or hundreds of agents that could have access to a phone that could just call him every 5 minutes nonstop and send emails and send texts and send like postal letter mails through an online API service that sends postcards. That's just like he'll get it. He'll be like he'll either move or he'll fix his problem.
oh, he's gonna figure out it's me and come knocking at my door. That's what's gonna happen. I think we just went to the dark side. We probably shouldn't encourage people, but in no way does my opinion
reflect
show the opinion of Outwired. You know, disclaimer, CYA.
I thought you were going to actually say the name of your business there for a second, but like we don't know what that is. You didn't even respond to that, man. Like I can't even say that name. Probably like that was a great name that I sent you. I can't believe I didn't even get a laugh from that, man.
Potentially, but I can't say it. You probably have already trademarked it, so I can't.
That was like the tier 1 from our consultant we're going to introduce. That wasn't even like the tier 2 or tier 3 stuff.
Are we talking about Pitch Please? Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah, that is pretty good.
Scott, I sent him this. So I sent him names, and it was Pitch Please Consulting was the name that Burnout Bob came up with, which I think is great, right? And it even designed him a logo. I don't know. I don't have the logo in front of me. Do I have the logo in front of me?
A little busy, but I get it. I get where you're going with it.
Yeah. I don't have the logo in front of me. Actually, you know what? Maybe I do. Where is this at? And then I'll answer Jessica's question, who's running the show too, because she's talking about graphic design. And then we'll move on to her story. Where is this at? Grungy Consult. It's called Grungy Consulting Logo Design is what the conversation is called. Just go ahead and share that real quick, Jessica. There. That's the logo ChatGPT did. And the only thing it messed up was under Outhouse. It was supposed to say "do not enter" is what the instructions were. But I like that. Like, there's just no way you can say "pitch please" and not think the other word. There's no way it can. I can't say it and not think about it. It doesn't matter what your background is or whether you curse or don't curse. Like, you just can't. So this is your answer, Jessica. You were asking, like, ChatGPT has a new feature that will get all the text right. It will do infographics and everything else. She said PPC is the initials of her company. Is it called Pitch Please Consulting? Okay. All right. Let's.
Already we got a lawsuit.
Well, do we want to introduce Burnout Bob real quick, or no? Like, we want to save that for later. Let's save that for later. All right, go ahead. Do a segment switch here for us, Greg. Let's talk about preparing for the upcoming campground season. Yeah, do the pivot.
Yeah, it's that time, right? It's in fact, it's late really up here. It's already April. A lot of parks are open or opening within the next
I'm sorry. I don't know what
weeks.
you're talking about unless you've actually done the pivot.
Oh, do I need to pivot?
Yes. All right.
Now
I feel reset.
360. Oh, now my vertigo is kicking in.
Eventually, there will be an AI that will watch the Outwired show for you, and it will like tell you the exact timestamp you need to start watching where Greg spins the chair so you can avoid all my bullshit in the beginning. And then you know when the good piece of the stuff starts, right?
Then we know when the show really begins.
Yes. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so it is definitely that time for northern parks. Southern parks are in their transition, probably snowbirds. Some of them are getting ready to leave, if not already leaving and heading back up here. And northern parks up, when I say up here, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm in Ohio. But any of these northern parks up here that typically are 6-month parks, boy, it's that time where you're running around with your hair on fire. I remember those days. I don't miss them at all. February always seemed like an illusion because it just doesn't exist. I don't know if it's those missing couple of days or what, but it's that time of year where there's too much to do and not enough time. And as a park owner, sometimes the whole year feels like that. But man, the beginning of the year is crazy as you're trying to go through checklist after checklist and ready equipment and infrastructure. And, whether it be your rec hall, your meeting space, your store, do you have all your inventory? It is a nonstop. It's like a fire hose of information that you need to get out. And at the same time, your customers are clamoring to get in, and you want to get that first revenue of the year in, but it just never feels like you're going to get it done. So much to do. It really depends on your park and what you've got. Are you a resort style park where you've got 2 or 3 pools to open in addition to getting your power back on and your water back on, which can take days in and of itself. Going to each pedestal, testing every outlet for voltage, tightening lugs in each pedestal. We had 240 sites. I usually did that with one other person, and that would take us quite a bit of time. Go to each pedestal, tighten all the lugs, go back, turn the power on, test all the outlets. And even then,
will you buy a campground when you have a robot to tighten all the lugs?
You have, no, I don't think so.
You were in the market,
Maybe it would be, we'll have to talk about how much the robots are. But if they're 30 grand, like you're talking about, then yeah, everybody's buying robots to tighten their lugs, because that's that thankless bust your knuckles up kind of work that nobody wants to do. And the robot would be able to do it with the power on and not have to worry about it. That was the drag for us, is you got to tighten the lugs with the power off, then go back, power everything up, and go to every pedestal again and check for voltage. Really? Check your GFIs.
These are the things I don't know. This is fascinating. Do you know this, Scott?
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me to learn, to hear about, right? The things that campgrounders do.
Not everybody does it, but you should. It's best practice, because the heat from, you got somebody plugged in, so all year long they're using it. The wires get hot. If the wires get hot, the lugs can get loose. So they need to be torqued every use. You get a torque wrench, the setting for each lug for the type of box you've got. And you go through and you make sure all those things are snug, and you look for any burned connections, or you look for any deterioration in the wire, any kind of like buildup that's telling you that it's starting to oxidize, and maybe you've got to cut that, splice it, and reconnect it. And that's just when it comes to electricity. Then turning on the water could take a week, because a park like ours was old. It wasn't exactly engineered. We had water lines running in places where 26 years later, I would dig up a hole and go, I just hit a water line. I would never have guessed there's a water line here. So we'd turn the water on, and it would take 7 days just to pressurize everything, because there's that much to get out and pressurize. And then you go through and maybe you're bleeding the air out for your customers before they arrive. Yeah, it's a serious task. And I hope that people out there are, again, like we talked about earlier, so you got the savvier owners, then you got the ones like, quite frankly, like we were for a really long time, where we thought it's like a badge of honor to put all the hats on and go out and spend, 80 hours a week trying to work your park and keep your staff down. We were one of those for sure. Hopefully people are taking advantage of everything that they can now to make their lives easier. And I'm not just talking about like checklists, but like AI, like ChatGPT. Like, how can if I have a checklist, I could upload that into GPT and then tell it about how I had my day and how all this stuff went wrong.
Checklist for you, right?
And absolutely, yeah. Take mine.
This is what
this is what I need to do.
How do you learn this? Like, so if you're a new campground owner, or you're listening to Greg and you're like, shit, my lug nuts, how do you figure this stuff out, right? Like, how do you, as the first time when you're doing it, where do you go to learn all this? Traditionally, before ChatGPT?
I'll tell you where you go, and it's where you still go, even if you got ChatGPT. You go to your state owners association, and if you don't have one,
are they gonna do they have checklists, really?
No. But when you go, let's say to the conference or to the meetings, you get in a room with your peers, and that is the knowledge base, right? That's GPT before there was GPT. You get in a room with all those people, and that is the knowledge base. And you just ask question after question. And I don't know if it's because it's a hospitality industry and those are the kind of people that get into it, but man, campground owners are damn friendly and reasonable and willing to share their information. And it's part of the reason that I'm in consulting. Because and Scott will attest to this, as a consultant, so much of what you do is goodwill, because you have to earn somebody's respect and trust before they're going to sign a contract with you. So you're giving them quite a bit of information before
Well, it's
you
the same as
ever
me. That's
even.
the way you do
Yeah,
good business.
right,
You
right.
build people's trust.
So I do that partially because I know I need to do that to land a client or a contract, but also because, it might sound silly to some people, I believe in karma. And if I don't give some of that back freely, I feel like it's going to bite me in the ass someday. So, and I enjoy doing it. We got a lot of free advice, but now, and I'm not telling you, if you're listening and you have a state association, be a member, be an active member,
Absolutely.
go to the conferences. It is invaluable. But now you have GPT or Claude or Gemini. You can come back in from a terrible day of busting up your knuckle tightening lugs and tell it what happened to you and say, I don't really have a checklist, but this is kind of how I go about my day. And it will reason with you through your day and help you create a checklist and streamline that work for next year. Maybe you need to start it 2 weeks earlier. Maybe you need to take a different set of tools with you instead, because no matter how many times I did it, we would head out to do it and get out in the field and be like, fuck, already forgot this and this and that. And then you got to drive all the way back to the front and then drive all the way back. And that's like 15 minutes in a big park like ours was. It was 15 minutes just to run back, get one thing you forgot and head back out. Streamline that stuff.
I get irritated for getting something downstairs 3 floors below, right?
Yeah, right. So why not use GPT or Claude, whatever your Perplexity is another one, right? I don't know how well that one would work for this kind of stuff.
Because then you can go to the conferences and you can ask much more substantive questions of the owners.
Yes, and you can share what you built. Look what I built. Look, this thing helps me. Now you're that person that's the thought leader. You're the person that's the innovator. Now the next time you go back to the conference, 20 of those people in that room are going to go, you really inspired me. Look what I built. And it just continues to drive innovation. That's why they're both important. You need the human end of it, and you need the artificial intelligence. And I really do believe, and I'm not just saying that because we're on the show, I believe AI is a need now. It's much like, it wasn't too long ago that RV parks and campgrounds looked at Wi-Fi as an amenity. And it's not. It's a utility now. It's the fourth utility. You got to have water, electric, sewer, and you have to have Wi-Fi. If you don't, boy, oh boy, are you going to take a hit on your ADR and your occupancy. And no matter what anybody says, and I know there are parks out there that operate on a different model, and that's great. And I hope they're success. No Wi-Fi. We want you to be disconnected. That's awesome. I don't know anyone, including myself, and I fully admit this. I love to go camping where I can't get signal because I want to be disconnected. But after about 6 hours, I'm like, son of a bitch, I can't even check the weather. All right, now because I'm camping in a tent, like I want to be at least able to check the weather. So you need connectivity. No matter how much you don't want it, eventually everybody wants it. It's the same thing with AI. I feel like it's not, it's a need. You should be using it, playing with it for any of this kind of stuff. And if hopefully we sometimes spark a thought like this, your opening checklists, your pool, your
let's do this real quick. Let's do an exercise. So Jessica, share that, and you can tell us if you agree, right? We're just going to do a quick exercise.
Sure.
I need a checklist to open my RV resort for the summer season. So just hit that, this number 5 there. Yeah. And you can bring it up full screen on the little thing so they can read it, Jessica. But so this is, we'll call it regular Chat GPT, and then we'll ask what Burnout Bob thinks after this. We'll introduce Burnout Bob. So this is so checklist. So we have facility prep. So you can kind of see this. I'll make it a little bit bigger, and then we'll just briefly scroll down through. Does that look good for you?
Greg? Yeah, I can read it.
Anything you would add, or does this look pretty good?
Well, so like most owners, if it's their first time, this might be great. If it's not their first time, they're going to have all this stuff, right? At least if nothing else, it's built into their brain.
Yeah.
But then this would allow you to, okay, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need that. I'm not doing this. This doesn't apply to me. Oh, but I hadn't thought about this, like updating the website with the new rates. Like boy, that better have been done already.
Right.
I'm trying to, I'm looking at, inspecting each site for debris, damage or hazards, right? That's in a park that's short-term. If you got short-term sites, that's a daily inspection, right? Maybe you can't get your guys to do it the same way, no matter how hard you try, or your gals to do it the same way, no matter how hard you try, or you want more detail on it. So copy and paste that into the box and say, you know what, I do this and I do it in this way right now. You think there's a better way I could go about it, because what I end up with is we miss A, B, C, and D. How can you help me fix that? It's not only is it going to suggest things to you, but it'll ask you in most cases, would you like me to build you a policy or a workflow for that? Yes to all. And there it is for you. Copy and paste it into a Word document, edit it to whatever you need to, put your branding in it or your voice to it. But the amount of time it saves and the amount of detail that you can build into your opening, it's outstanding. And then with each year,
you get detail though. There's no fucking lug nuts on here, man. There's no lug nuts on this list.
Listen, this is why some people refer to me as the sage. This is where it comes from.
This is why you need a consultant like Greg.
That's right. Yep, that's right. I'll happily
have
help
the
you.
Data on the torque ratio for the lug nut. Greg will have the lug nut tip. They work really well together.
That's right.
So
together we'll get all your nuts tightened.
I don't know if I'm touching that one.
Probably
but
not.
Yes, sure.
Don't touch those nuts. Yeah, don't touch those nuts. I'm
still trying to get Scott to just curse on the show once.
I have. Yeah, but
you won't say fuck though, is what Greg
did say that, and you totally missed it.
I believe he did actually.
What did you say?
Yeah. I'm a ninja cursor.
I'm sorry. What did you say? What was it again? See, he won't do it.
No, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck either.
Okay,
he's not going to be bullied.
All right, that's fair.
I'll say it again at some point, and you'll never notice.
That's probably true.
Like the Irish goodbye. Remember, I demonstrated that last year in Florida.
Oh, I know you'll say it when you're not on the show. I'm not questioning that. Okay, so now let's introduce our new friend here, right? I think if you guys like him, he's going to be a regular occurrence on the show once in a while, right? Depending on just what questions we want to ask him at random intervals. He won't be like a long featured segment or anything like that. So what I did is and for those of you who don't know, you can go into ChatGPT and you can give AI a personality. You can tell it, the very basic of this is act as a lawyer, act as an accountant, act as a marketing professional, act as a social media expert. And it basically refines down its knowledge, right? To just be more topically focused because it knows the whole internet. So if you give it a narrow set to pull from, you get a little bit better results sometimes depending on how you talk to it, right? So one of the very first things I did with this thing, in 2023 when it first came out, is I got the thing to drunk text with me. So I gave it a role and I said, you're an extremely drunk person and you randomly misspell words and nothing you do is coherent, and then you randomly utter a sentence that has nothing related to it at the end of it. It was quite hilarious. And I told it, and you can tell it never to break the role, never to break the character, right? So I did this for, I created a personality for us, and it named itself Burnout Bob. I didn't name it that. Named itself Burnout Bob. And I just told you were, it's just basically you're an insane campground consultant with a lot of other things underneath it that I built this personality with. So if you want to share the screen again. So I'm going to ask it the same question here. I need a checklist to open my RV resort for the season. And this is what Burnout Bob is going to tell us here. So do we need to read this for the podcast or I don't know. So, oh, sweet Jeepers Crispus. Yes, you do. You need a checklist to open your RV resort for the summer? Well, guess what? I got you covered in duct tape, gasoline, and the kind of checklist that gets you investigated by at least 3 alphabet agencies and a retired park ranger named Peggy Chainsaw, who's been legally dead since 1987 but keeps sending letters anyway. This ain't your daddy's checklist. This is Burnout Bob's officially unofficial summer opening RV resort checklist of doom. So I like this. This is pretty good so far. Are we confident in the advice that this is going to give?
Definitely not. But that's probably the entertainment factor.
It's now with 33% more accidental arson is the checklist here. So okay, so here we go. First, so we got check the power grid.
So there it is.
Make sure
check the power grid.
Make sure the power is on by licking the main breaker. If you see, I can't even read this without laughing. If you see God, it's working. So replace all frayed wires with Christmas lights and hope for the best. Plug in a waffle iron and listen for ominous buzzing. Again, we're not saying that Outwired recommends that you do any of this.
Yes, definitely.
Or
definitely needs to
whatever Greg's company will or will not be named, or
Yes.
Consulting Group either. Definitely do not try this at your campground. I was going to say home, but
Both.
evict all winter creatures. Possums in the vending machines. Eviction notice. Serve them a cease and desist letter written in peanut butter. Raccoons in the hot tub. Okay, let's see what else. We're not going to read all this. Bathroom inspection. Flush every toilet. If one explodes, that's your VIP suite. Make sure no snakes have unionized in the septic tanks. Hang at least one air freshener per square inch. That would like.
That's really funny. There are a lot of people that do that.
Maybe.
There are a lot of people that do that actually. And you can't, like, if you have air fresheners and ass always wins. You can't, those two things, no matter what you do, you're not going to get rid of it with the air fresheners.
I like the replace the fire pit ash with glitter. Campers love glitter fires. That would be interesting. It's like an opening celebration thing for people, right?
Actually, probably true. Yeah.
Check picnic tables for bees. If bees are present, relocate table to Canada. That makes sense. Like, I mean, you don't want to spend the time to get rid of the bees, right?
Yeah.
Replaying lines on the road using expired nacho cheese and a leaf blower. That may be more time consuming. I don't know if that necessarily is the best. Scott, are you finding this humorous? I can't tell if you're laughing or disappointed in Burnout Bob or me or
neither. It takes a lot to disappoint me. So
okay.
Please.
So I've made it there, but Burnout Bob hasn't yet. Noted. All right.
We're just wondering, is it you or Burnout Bob that were really high during this creation? Because this is this is like the kind of stuff that usually is followed up with.
Yeah, like I swear, like I tried to recreate him a couple different ways, but this first time that I did it, he's literally perfect and makes me laugh like half the time I'm reading this stuff. Like amenity activation, reinflate the bounce house, but fill it with fog. Add one aggressive goose. Like if you're looking for an experience, we've talked about experiential hospitality. This could be the thing that brings more people who may or may not be wearing police officer uniforms to your park, but more people. Let's just focus on the top of the funnel, right? Let's not get to the who those people are. That's a good idea, actually. Like you could do that. Activate Wi-Fi by duct taping a router to a drone and letting it fly in circles. That's a new definition for spotty coverage. But like, if you just had somebody complain, you could just move the drone, right?
Yeah, I think Musk already branded that. That's his bargain version of Skylink.
Bargain version of Skylink. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's how he's doing it.
Staff check-in. Rehire anyone who survived last season. New staff orientation. Show them a slideshow of past injuries and tell them it's worse now. Reservations and customer chaos. Open the phones and immediately regret it. That feels real. That feels real, right?
That does feel real. Yeah, that does feel real.
Switch to a reservation system based entirely on interpretive dance. I swear if it was me, and this is why I don't own a park, I would actually do demos with a reservation system and have Burnout Bob come up with questions to ask them if they offer that feature. Event schedule. Okay, let's just see which ones are the funniest. Signage replace quiet hours sign with unleash the night. That could be, depending on your audience and your niche, right? All directional signs should point in confusing passive aggressive ways. Put a big welcoming sign that just says nope. And insurance, ha 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 ha. Good luck with that, champ. There you go. The checklist is either guaranteed to open your resort, summon a demon, or create a legally recognized sovereign campground nation. Let me know if you want a printable version, laminated in bacon grease and sealed with raccoon hair. What's next, Captain Firepit? You want help with staffing, activities, marketing your resort via interpretive skydiving? Let's crank this chaos up.
Did he name you Captain Firepit? Was that part of the exercise?
He just named me Captain Firepit. Yeah.
Nice.
Interesting.
So, all right. So we've got our checklist. Let's go back to the serious stuff for a second. If we need to get back to Burnout Bob and ask him questions, we can later. So we've got our checklist. We're working through all this stuff. When do we start this? Like ideally, obviously that depends on the size of your resort and all the things, right? But let's assume we're an average size resort, let's say 100, 200 sites. When am I starting this? What am I like? If I know my checklist, if I know what I have to do already, if it's in my head, like I said, both when am I starting it? But what are some of the things that you feel like are often missed on owners' checklists? I think would be the value add here, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of park owners don't put enough time, don't recognize for themselves how much of their time is going to be spent on the closing of the previous season. Like we can't, you want to talk about like, it's worse than kids waiting to open their Christmas gifts, like getting that park closed, because then you feel like there's a little bit of a release. I always liken it to like when it's open, it's a living thing and it tells you what you're going to do every single day. And when it's closed, you have a little more control over the beast. You can sort of make because maybe you don't have, and again, this is speaking very broad terms and really to just seasonal park owners. But if it's closed, or even if it's your shoulder season or your off season, let's say, if you are a 12-month owner, you have a little more control. But really, once you get through the closing, and then you're trying to maybe hit some holiday, you've got Thanksgiving coming, you can actually see family because you haven't seen anybody all season long. You've been working weekends, you've been working holidays. So you see some family for Thanksgiving, you see them for Christmas. New Year's comes, and then you're getting right into tax season. If by the time you get into mid-January, you're not already started with your opening in some way or another, you're probably in trouble. So a lot of folks bring their reservations online in January. Some people, I used to just leave my calendar open a year out. If I had somebody on July 4th wanted to make a reservation next July 4th and they're standing there in front of me, my goodness, I wasn't going to tell them no.
I mean,
there are a lot of park owners
I want to pause that for
that.
1 second here and talk about that, because this is something that's been bothering me for a couple years. Smart to capture the money when you can, but in a time of dramatic inflation where electricity and insurance and all the things are going up, do you fuck yourself by doing that now?
Yes and no. You can, right? Because you don't, at that point, I don't know what my rate's going to be for next year. So I let them pay, but they always paid knowing the rate could change and they might have a few dollars due on that reservation when they come next year. Yeah. So it's always going to be when they check in, what's the rate when they check in? And they know that if they're scheduling that far out. The reason that most people that I know that do that, I'm totally jealous of Scott right now because he's got his dog in there. And I'm so distracted right now. Most of the people do this because they don't want it. It did get to a point where we had probably 75% of our crowd on the holiday weekend was the same people every year. And we would have guests call us and say, geez, I can never get in for you on July 4th because you're already booked out by the time I call, and I'm calling you in April. How are you already booked out? You probably needed to call me in July. So it doesn't get new eyes on your park, and that can be problematic. But I had a hard time passing up. If somebody's there and they want to give me money for a reservation, I have a really hard time saying no to that. So I take it, I put it on the books. And, obviously that goes into a different bucket. It's not like I'm spending it this year. Make sure you're bucketing your cash. Don't spend next year's cash this year. Terrible idea. But I would, I couldn't not take it. I saw it as an opportunity that I did not want to miss. So, but yeah, back to like in January, if you are opening your phones back up, and even if you're not, even if you are starting out, say you're leaving your calendar open a year out, typically speaking, after the first of the year, people are thinking about those plans. And those first couple of weeks of January, we would get quite a few calls, and a lot of other parks do as well. They get a lot of calls those first couple of weeks with people starting to book their summer trips, trying to be proactive. And by the time that happens, if you don't have your rates set and let's say you have activities for the next year, if you don't have that set where you can be out marketing them, if you're not set with all your checklists and your supplies and your purchasing for your retail operation, you're probably already behind the 8 ball a lot, because you never know what weather is going to do. And that's always the deciding factor, right? Am I going to get all those lugs tightened, or am I going to get 3 straight weeks of rain? There were 4 times in the 26 years that we owned our park that we had, and this is in May, so like we're open, but it speaks to how much weather can screw with you. We had 26 or more days of rain in the month of May, 4 times in 26 years. Yeah. It's impossible to do anything. Well, what if that happens with snow or rain or sleet in February, in March, in April? You're really stuck.
Why is it impossible? Is it impossible to do anything physically, or because you just don't want to be outside in the rain, or because the gear is not there, or What is it literally impossible or?
Depends on the job. If you're trying to work the ground, absolutely impossible, right? I'm not going to spread gravel. I'm not going to grade anything. I certainly can't, I need to bring in topsoil or something. I need to reseed a lawn. That's all out the window. It's
For
all
sure.
gone.
Okay, I get that. Yeah, that makes,
Yeah.
because obviously you have to reseed a lawn when the seeds can go into the lawn.
If you've got long-term customers and they want to get their RV to you, say they've rented their site, they're a seasonal customer, they want to bring the RV in. Okay, when can you get it on the site? If it rains 26 days in a row, probably sometime in August, right? Or I'm having to buy ground mats and actually mat over mat the two tires on the RV, backing it up 8 feet, putting another mat behind it, backing it up 8 feet, putting another mat behind it. The weather obviously affects everything. So quite frankly, if you're not on it and already trying to get ahead of things in January, anytime you get good weather, and by good weather, I mean, if it's not raining, you just go, right? Campground owners are tough, hardy folks. They will pile on the clothes and the gloves and go out and take a beating in just about anything, as long as they can. So yeah, yes to all, I guess, Brian. It depends on the work you're doing. Sometimes you don't want to get wet. Doesn't matter. You strap on the rain gear and you go, because you know that clock is ticking and you have only so much time to get to it. So there you have it.
I want to talk about data in a second. I feel like we should briefly cover some breaking news if you guys want to talk about it for a second. We have the tariff numbers. Do you guys want to talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So, Jessica, can you share my screen real quick? And I'm just digesting this. That's what I was kind of turning my head and I was listening to you at the same time I was reading this. So from what I understand, and I don't know how this impacts Mexico and Canada yet, Trump's policy will put in place a baseline 10% tariff on all goods from all countries, except those compliant. And that's to be clear, this is a baseline tariff. We're going to look at something on Twitter that I pulled up for you guys in a second. So a minimum 10% on what I am reading is everybody except Mexico, Canada, USMCA free trade agreement. Now I have not seen anything that talks about whether the 25% that he delayed is still supposed to go into effect on Mexico and Canada. That doesn't appear to be part of the conversation yet. There's no numbers that I can find that say anything about Mexico and Canada so far. But it feels like the last I heard specific to that before we look at these reciprocal numbers was that his executive order, like he signed this, he was just delaying it, right? So in theory, unless he's changed this, the 25% should now come into effect and the auto tariff should come into effect in addition to this.
Is that what it's saying if you scroll down right there, or am I stepping on you?
Oh, yep, I didn't even see that. 25% tariff on all foreign automobiles effective at midnight. The U.S. will impose a 25% tariff. That's actually more important to us. Thanks for catching that. I thought I was down enough.
That should include RVs, correct? They're vehicles, but they're not. Yeah. Most of them are not foreign made.
Well,
but components are.
Yeah. All foreign made automobiles effective at midnight to address horrendous imbalances. Trump noted how many countries impose high tariffs on U.S. made cars. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. I'm not sure that that's true, Mr. Trump, but we'll obviously stay away from politics. And I say that friend and foe in many cases. The friend is worse than the foe. So trend is okay. Like it says all foreign made. I think we're going to need to see a definition of what foreign made is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's foreign made. So then there's the 10%, putting America first. Administration is defending farmer and ranchers. But then there is something here, like he does specifically criticize tariffs from Canada on dairy products, but to my knowledge, like in large subsidies like Canada and Mexico, but to my knowledge, there's nothing in the reciprocal tariffs portion of this that directly addresses Canada or Mexico. So we're still waiting on that. Here's another update. I'm just watching this. And then, so here is this Twitter account put together so this is the impact, right? So when I say a minimum of 10%, and we're not going to spend too much time on all the countries, right? But this is, as I'm reading this, and you guys tell me if you're seeing it differently, the left column is the tariffs that this country's charges to the USA. The right is the new reciprocal tariff that is labeled as discounted. So I don't know if this is, does it appear to be 50%? 29 to 58, roughly 37 to, well, 37 would be 60, 74. Yeah. Does it appear to be 50% that we're reciprocal tariffing people based on quick math? Or, yeah, at least a minimum of 10% on everybody else?
Some of it's 100%, right? 10 to 10, 10 to 10.
Well, yeah, but a minimum baseline of 10, right, is what everybody is. So here's 10% on all these countries, and I don't know how much we import from all these countries. Here's, I don't know what we import from St. Pierre, and I didn't even know that was a country, to be perfectly honest with you. I feel terrible for wherever that is, but I'm going to go on vacation there next year to make up for it. Unless it's feels like it's not, but unless it's in the middle of Ukraine is what I was going to say. But it feels like it's not a Ukrainian town, or well, it couldn't be because it's a country, right? That was a stupid thing to say. So, all right. Anyway, so we have 30% there. Nobody I recognize there. I can't remember if I was on this one or not. Was that the one no. All right. So British Virgin Islands is 10%. Opium's about to go up from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that Afghanistan charges 49% and our reciprocal tariffs are only 10 on Afghanistan. I wonder why that is. Probably because of opium. The drug people lobbied?
Mm.
I don't know. I'm just speculating here, right? But like,
sure,
here's 50%. There's got to be a reason that was exempted, right? There was some kind of policy decision behind that. Bermuda, we have Jamaica, Iraq is 50%. Again, I don't know how much we import or export from these different places. Belize, the big ones are up at the top, so I'm just skimming through these real quick to see if there's anything else that we might be paying attention to. Peru, so Norway is 15%, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Madagascar, Egypt. Okay, so now here's
cost of vanilla beans are going up,
right? 20% from the European Union, 34% from China, if I'm reading that correctly. I don't know if that's 34% on top of whatever he's charging, or if that includes the 10% that he's already done already. But that's going to have an impact on imports for sure from China. 20% from the European Union. What else do we think? Like, I don't know how much we import from India. Japan that'll be interesting to see if the 24% reciprocal from Japan is stacked on top of the 25% on foreign-made autos, and whether foreign-made autos count like Toyota's plant in the United States, or whether it, right?
Yeah, I think there's some big questions there because, like, is it there's the raw materials versus where they're assembled.
Yeah, that's and again, whether like it has to include parts, right? How else do you say foreign-made car? There must be some kind of language that says what percentage of something constitutes a foreign car, is what I'm guessing.
The White House press secretary did state specifically that if you make your cars in the United States, there will be no tariffs on them. But as we know, the messaging is not always accurate or clear or even consistent. So who knows if that's correct?
What does make your car mean? Does that mean assemble your car, or does that mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Israel, Philippines, Australia's 10%. So there's but I don't see anything with Canada or Mexico in here. In these reciprocal tariffs.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what this account is, but CNN cited it. So, and they're tweeting, like, obviously both sides of the political aisle, so that's fine. I don't see any more updates here. The Dow futures are tumbling. That's like I'm most interested in Canada, Mexico, and the vehicle stuff. That's what we gotta. So we'll see if we can find an answer to that while we keep talking. But that's what we got so far.
I mean, one of the things that and again, not to get
And I'm going to go look at, just to be clear, I'm going to go look at Fox News and different sources so we can have a clear picture from everybody, right, while we talk.
But apart from the idea of hard goods, being impacted, is the relationships, and that affects our industry a lot. It affects travel and tourism tremendously.
Yes.
You have people who there's a, if it's bad will out there, they're going to be less likely to come here. And even if it's off a few percentage points, and it looks like it's going to be off by a lot, it affects things. And that's part of this equation. It's that intangible almost that goes beyond just the cost of manufacturing and selling an RV.
Goes back to exactly what you were talking about before, Scott. How do you measure sentiment, right? So how do we know how that's going to play out? And we talked weeks ago about the border crossings from Canada and how that's going to affect parks, especially that are nearby the border, and not just parks nearby the border. I mean, we get a lot of travelers from Canada that come down to the United States. That's already way down. So how much is international travel down, especially as people, they hear stories or see messaging about, someone came in, their visa was a little shady and they got disappeared and held in a detainment facility for 12 days while they waited. They just want to go home and they're not even released. Right. Then those things are happening now. What kind of chilling effect will that have on travel for an industry like ours? That's everything.
Fox News says Trump's previously announced 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada are slated to take effect Wednesday also. After Trump granted temporary, that doesn't mean he's not going to extend them again.
Yeah.
But this is Fox News says that right there. And then the imported cars, as well as another 25% tariff on all car parts, will take effect no later than May 3rd, as well as a 25% tariff on nations that purchase oil from Venezuela.
Well, there you go. So there's your parts. And again, this isn't to lean into any one political ideology or standpoint. It's just, these are open questions that I think everyone, the three of us and anyone watching or listening, needs to be thinking about. Nobody's got a crystal ball.
We're not diving into politics here. Like we're just, again, we're reading the numbers from both. Like we're giving credence to both sides of both websites here. We're not talking about whether we agree or disagree. Like this is just news, right? Is what we're talking about. So that was the only thing we went on so far. But okay, so if we find more stuff, we can dive into that. Let's go back to our prepping the campground for the season. Scott, like, what do you feel like you can contribute to this data-wise?
And this may sound a little out there, but I think it's important. And again, Greg could probably talk to this better than me, but the whole idea of when you're prepping for the season, it's like it goes beyond, upgrades and stuff like that. But it's making sure that when you open the door, it's just like any business. It's like, how do you look? Are you ready? I mean, how prepped are you? Avoiding the glitches, all those things, because there's gonna be a lot of new people coming in, and even if it's early in the season, you may have to do some extra stuff. If you open in May, and there are a lot of campgrounds here in Maine that open in May, and the weather could be pretty unpredictable, and sometimes it can get pretty nasty. Those are the things I feel like you have to be prepped for, and what can people do as well. So, I think in that regard, it's like how are you managing the expectations of the guests when they show up? That first group, the first people that set foot there, because if you're not prepped, it's going to show, and those people will let you know.
Yeah, there's. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that's an excellent counterpoint to what I was talking about. Everything was about the park and the infrastructure, right? And Scott nailed it. Your personal preparation has got to be ready too, right? It's been how many months since you've turned the switch on and been smiling all the time and not letting them see you sweat and keeping the duck mentality, right? Where everything's calm on the surface, but you're paddling like a maniac underneath, and so that they don't see the glitches and they don't see that maybe you're drowning in paperwork or in email replies or tightening lugs or whatever it is. Scott's absolutely right on. Preparing yourself mentally and physically for that season, that can be a real grind. Absolutely important, so that when they walk in from day one, the guest experience is there exactly as you left it when you closed.
Okay, so
Go
I
ahead,
want
sorry,
to.
Brian, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I'm just reading this news at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I do have a number on China that clarifies that in a second because that's going to impact a lot of majority imports. But like I think where you can just to give you time to think a sec, Scott. I think where you could contribute most to this prep discussion, from my opinion, and I'm not saying I'm right, but just and there's certainly more areas, is a how do I prep for like what might or might not happen in my campground season. I want to say 2025, but I just mean generally speaking, you take this to any year, right? How do I use the data that's coming at me, whether that's economic or industry or behavior, or whether they're buying larger RVs or smaller RVs, or whether they're on Facebook more than they are on Instagram, which is maybe more me, but like, and I can talk about that in a second. But how do I prep from it from a data standpoint? What do I pay attention to each year? Like maybe in January and February, and then what do I pay attention to as I get closer to opening and closing? And I know some of that is economic because of what we're talking about, but I think we've covered that enough to say let's go in a different direction with data.
Yeah, I think, again, beyond the economic stuff, the gas prices and consumer sentiment and all that we talked about, previously, is that I think, one thing that we can do is look at what has happened historically early at the startup of the season, and look, don't just look at the COVID years, look at the last couple of years, but also look pre-COVID. What happened? Who showed up? Who didn't? What were they? What were they in? What was your occupancy? All those things like that happen early on. I would compare, in fact, for this year, I would compare it mostly to 2019, because in some ways I feel like this year will resemble 2019 more than it has the last few years. So there's that. The other thing I would do too is I would be on social media and boards and anywhere I can in my spare time, and I would be observing and interacting with people out there and seeing what they're planning and what's the chatter. They always like to talk about chatter. What's the chatter out there among the RVers and the campers and so on? Like what are they talking about now? And to even participate yourself maybe in some of these conversations, insert yourself in there and just join a group and ask people a question like, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling about this year? It's kind of your own little informal way of doing a little research that you don't have to pay for. So if I was a campground owner, I would do a lot of that. I'd be on social media a lot. I'd be stalking a lot of these groups. I already do, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's and I read through the comments already, and it helps me actually in some ways, because I see how people talk about what they're going to do, what they're planning, what are they seeing that's different this year, and that's kind of how I feel like. Anyway, it's an inexpensive and not even really a super time-consuming way of gathering your own intelligence, and again, engage in the conversation. Like I'll sometimes contact the administrators even of these Facebook pages and ask them if I can post a question or post a link to a survey or something to ask some questions of people or do some interviews. And most of the time they're actually quite responsive. So anyway, those to me are beyond, again, the other stuff, the macro stuff that we've talked about. I think that's the way to do it, way to get at it. I would ask questions too. I would ask probing questions about not just what's going to happen in the coming weeks, but are they delaying their trips? Are they what's the look forward for the season?
Yeah, that's interesting. And we're going to put out some research on some of that stuff, right? But I wanted to see, I was asking ChatGPT about camper trends. Before I do that, let's close this conversation. So the tariffs on Canada and Mexico are supposedly going to take effect, 25%, but they are exempted from the reciprocal tariffs as long as the 25% tariffs remain in effect, is what it says here. This is CNBC that I found this on. So the 10% tariff would only kick in when the original 25% duties are terminated or suspended. The 25% duties, okay, so those are supposed to go into effect now. No clarity on whether the auto imports stack on top of that or what that definition is yet. There is clarity on China. China is Clarified to CNBC's Eamon Jevers that the tariff rate on Beijing comes in addition to existing 20% tariffs on Chinese imports, meaning the true tariff rate on China is 54%. So that's a big number.
So it's going up 34% over, but everybody's already feeling the 20, right? So but they're going to feel another. Essentially, your goods from China are going to cost you a third more
on top of that.
Potentially.
And so what is interesting here, and we don't know, is obviously countries are going to respond to this. Regardless of, forget about whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it. Like, there's obviously countries who are not going to accept this without raising their own tariffs. So what comes into question now is, how far does reciprocal go? Is it a fluid reciprocal? Is it a static reciprocal, right? So there's that. So that's China and there. That's all I have for that so far. So I asked ChatGPT, regular ChatGPT for now, what are some data points and things I should pay attention to based on current camper conversations heading into 2025 that would help me run my park better, something different this year. And so these are some of the ones that it highlighted: workcation and mobile office-friendly setups, high percentage of remote hybrid workers looking for extended stays with strong Wi-Fi. Like, this is interesting to me. Like, if you're headed into a down economy, potentially, right? And we got to at least show their faces, Jessica. Like, we don't want, like, because if we don't show their faces, then they might fall asleep because of the things we're talking about, right? We don't want to give them a chance to do that. So hybrid. So this is interesting. I had this conversation with a couple owners who were asking me how to diversify their marketing audiences and get more weekly business. Like, this is part of the answer, especially if people are staying closer to home. Like, you have a cabin, and if that's sitting empty Tuesday to Thursday, for example, just making up a thing, or Monday to Thursday, then why not, like, create some kind of advertising for a co-working space if you're near enough to a city where it makes sense to say, like, come out and use my thing for an hour or 2 hours or a 6-hour package, or sell a monthly co-working pass where you can access the cabin. And I get it, like, you're going to have to clean more often, right? Like, but you probably don't have to, like, you probably have to spot check, but you probably don't have to do a deep clean between co-working people, right? So maybe you can get away with a deep clean on Thursday before somebody checks in to stay still, if that makes sense. So do you guys agree with that? Like thinking about ways that you can be flexible with, like, electrical vehicle charging stations, or like just bringing more of the public in. Maybe they don't stay the night, but maybe they can use your park and you can get some money from them, and then they're exposed to, like, oh, look, this is a nice cabin. I went to work here for an hour. Maybe I want to bring my family back here.
Yep, absolutely. It's good exposure.
So those data that we've talked about before: eco-conscious, sustainability practices, we've talked about that. Pet-centric travel. I don't know. I actually didn't pay attention to whether this actually went out and looked at the internet before it got this answer, but a spike in camper reviews mentioning pet friendliness, positive or negative.
Pet-centric travel is really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Really important.
Digital experience but look at pet-centric travel. Just think, like, let's think completely outside of the box here, right? There are obviously lots of daycare places for dogs. Now, I'm not saying it makes sense for you to hire somebody unless you have a really strong marketing and you're right outside a city to be like the person who watches a bunch of dogs all day. But that's an opportunity, again, to say, like, if that does make mathematical sense for me, and if I can put enough marketing muscle behind it to get, and I'm close enough to a city, lots of intangibles here, right? And it makes sense for me, not a blanket statement, but to say, like, now I've got a whole bunch of people who are willing to pay me for doggy daycare during the day, right? Because these businesses exist in all the cities. Like, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who will send their dogs to daycare to play with their dogs, and you've got a dog park already. These are people who may not own RVs, have never considered you before, who are now coming to drop off and pick up their dogs at your campground and seeing your cabins and all your things, right? Like, again, not all this makes sense, but this is some of the stuff that, if you're heading into a tough economy, or even if you just are in a great economy and you want to, like, fill up midweek with money, even if you can't fill up overnights, this is a way to do it. Obviously, you have to run the math.
By the way, it reminds me of a video I saw yesterday on, it's like one of the RVing sites, that someone had their nanny cam going in their RV while they were gone.
Mhm.
and on the nanny cam, it showed their dogs ripping apart their furniture. Speaking of
Yeah.
doggy daycare, I bet they wish they had doggy daycare.
Yeah.
And there are parks doing that for their I mean, it's typically larger resort style parks, but there are definitely parks with like small daycare slash boarding facilities for the people that stay with them. I don't know of anyone operating like that separate entity where they're doing it for the outsiders, but yeah, that's definitely something you can lean into. As Scott said, pet centric travel is really important.
Yeah. Digital experience expectations. More campers want some mobile booking, real time info, map and weather alerts and event schedules, curated localized experiences. So again, like you can use ChatGPT to create some of this as we've done on the show before, right? Like again, like curate some local experiences, uh, create the agendas, put them into a Word doc. Like, I mean, heck, have AI create audio tours of a city. Like you could easily, I haven't even thought of that. You could easily create a walking tour of your city, like 5 or 6 different walking tours with AI voicing it over that you could put as a podcast on Spotify that like again, it's not that that's going to attract hundreds of people, but you can do it in if you're good with AI like less than an hour. And then you have something else that could potentially be a difference maker from an experiential standpoint, right? Quiet and private spaces for zones that are feeling more secluded or quiet. This is interesting to me. And I keep watching my own LinkedIn and being surprised what my AI is posting every day sometimes. But it posted the other day about like having a barefoot space in your campground where people can just take off. Like you'd have to obviously maintain it and it'd have to be like not a gimmick, but having a barefoot space where people could feel the grass with their toes.
Oh yeah, this is something that we'll be talking about more. It's called grounding.
Yep.
It's an actual thing. So yeah, it's a growing trend. You know, I know we talked about forest bathing in the past, but
Yeah.
this is along those same lines. This is a thing.
I want to, yeah, like one day maybe we'll never like people won't be able to prove it, but maybe we'll do the show without our like grounded, but we're not going to put our feet on camera.
Oh Lord, no.
No,
Yeah.
no, we
Yeah,
don't
no,
want
we're
that.
not going to do that.
No,
Nope.
nobody wants that.
No,
No.
nobody wants that, right? But like we could do it grounded and see how like maybe we'll have an interesting discussion. We'll just have to
Let's-
trust each other that we're doing it.
Grounding and forest bathing at the same time. Take your laptop and go sit out in the woods with your feet on the ground and
I love this idea. This
Oh.
sounds like a great idea.
Okay, you guys should come to Canada and do that.
I
I
can
think
do
we all
that in
go
my
to-
backyard. So
I was going to say, I think we all go to Maine. I think that's easier. But you might get disappeared coming in, dude. So just hold on tight.
I just got my passport renewed, so I might be coming up there anyway. I don't know.
We could do something in the summer. Like we could go do like a live near Banff National Park or something.
That'd be cool.
Do the show live there.
That'd be
So-
actually
That sounds really good.
Okay. Curated local experiences, quiet private spaces, safety and security signals, mentions of security and increasing foursomes. What to track differently this year? Sentiment from reviews. Use a tool or just a spreadsheet to categorize what people mention or AI. Unprompted, prioritize what keeps coming up. Like again, this is. Is there laws about recording people in person or is it just over the phone for consent? Obviously, you want to disclose that you are, to be clear, ethically, right? But is there actually a law that says you can't?
It's state by state.
But it's consent, period. It's not just over the phone, is what I'm asking, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be interesting. Like, you wouldn't want to disclose it and do it because it would change the conversation. But if you could do it and you were willing to, like, obviously be ethical, really high above the board, if your state allowed it, if it was legal, to just kind of like how they mic up the NBA players, right?
Mm-hmm.
To just take that and have a natural conversation with your guests and then like feed that into AI and extrapolate out like what are some key takeaways from here that I should pay attention to, some feedback that I might have missed in the conversation to make my park better.
Yeah,
That'd be interesting.
I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews with people, and by the time you're done with intros and told them you're recording, everybody forgets about it. So I actually like that approach. I think that it gives you tone It gives you, how strong someone feels about it. I would, if people will, let you, I would absolutely do some recordings. That's actually a great way to get information.
Yeah, my AI was talking about like setting up a camper podcast around the campfire, where you like just talk to your campers about their experience at your property or whatever, and then you have a podcast content that you can post on Spotify or whatever else, right? Edit into videos, stuff like that. I feel like I know what Burnout Bob would say. I'm going to channel my Burnout Bob. I'm not actually going to ask him yet. I feel like Burnout Bob would say, hire someone to be like one of those undercover investigators you used to see on the Eyewitness News, right? When we were older and they actually used to do real reporting. I feel like sometimes they still do real reporting, but to just literally be undercover with a hidden camera and just like cause chaos in the park. Just go up to people and be like, man, this park fucking sucks. What do you guys think about it? And just see if you can like instigate people to tell the real feelings of what they like, whether they like actually say. Because if you get somebody who's and here's my reasoning. This is psychology, right? One, this is not a good idea. Don't do this at your park. But two, if you actually think about it, if you're able to, if somebody really truly feels that way, sometimes people are hesitant to admit or say that. But if you get someone who's already agreeing with you, you're more likely to open up and share your opinion.
Oh,
That's
sure.
true,
Yeah.
right? So there is, even though don't do this at your park, but like, right? There is some sign of science and methodology behind it, isn't it? Like, Scott, from a data standpoint?
What I think is really effective is to have someone, a friend, family member, someone come stay at your park and interact and have conversations, natural conversations with people while they're there. That's people are much more likely to open up to someone like that, and to just make sure that there's nothing leading. You want to keep it neutral, and basically say, how's it going? How's everything going here? How's your stay? It's like,
but if they know you're the owner, right? Obviously, again, don't go do the thing I just talked about. But if they
Right.
know you're the owner, it's different. If you're almost undercover and they think you're just another camper, or a staff member does this for you that maybe is behind the scenes that they don't see every day or would recognize, that's how you get I feel more truth, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It just has, someone basically act as a guest and stay there, do the whole thing, and just talk to people. It's a great way to get information.
Or hire somebody undercover, like as an undercover consultant or
I've
something
done
like
it
that.
myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't even need to hire somebody. Once again, I go back to the greatest untapped resource there is. Other park owners would do it for you as long as you do it for them. We used to have other park owners secret shop our park from the phone,
nice.
through emails. We would do that all the time, and then I would go to their park and do the same thing and just
nice.
Gather sentiment. And sometimes the parks right around me didn't want to do it, although they were usually, in my case, they were more than happy to. Like, we were really close with the parks around us because we realized very early on that we weren't really in competition with one another. If we were all great, it was just good for all of us. But it was typically parks that were a little further out. I would secret shop them. They would secret shop me. I would call their front desk. They would call my front desk. Awesome way to get feedback. And who better to give it to you than another park owner? They know the questions to ask, maybe the buttons to push if they're trying to get a reaction. As long as they're not, to Scott's point, as long as they're not leading, it's awesome data. Awesome data.
Two-part question. Number one, can they hire you to do it, Greg? And before you answer that question, the second part of that question is are there different rates for Ohio, Tennessee, Colorado, as an example, versus if your park is in the Bahamas, Hawaii?
If it's a site visit involved, definitely a lower rate. If we're talking about Central America, or I'm happy to do those site visits pro bono. Just cover my travel. No, I would honestly, I wouldn't take a dime for that. I would just tell them exactly what I said. You don't need me. You don't need to pay me at all. Find those other owners. You already know them without a doubt. Just call owner Bob 20 miles down the road and see if he wants to do the same for you, and crisscross, and away you go. You don't need me for any of that. If you want some help figuring out some questions,
ask ChatGPT.
Right. Ask GPT. Yep. but definitely do it with other owners. They're the best at it. Absolutely the best at it.
That's actually a good idea. We'll do that exercise in a second. So finishing up here before we do our length of stay changes. Are people staying longer or just weekends? Tailor your amenities accordingly. So obviously that depends on if you've got a giant water park, you obviously can't like tailor those amenities differently, right?
Yep.
But there are some things you can adjust. Day use versus overnight ratios. If more day trippers show up, think bathroom, snack availability, and signage. Pre-trip questions, analyze messages, calls, or emails before arrival. What are they unsure about? Community events, feedbacks, which activities fill up fast, which gets no shows. Pro tip, ask one smart question at checkout. Even a single optional question like what's one thing we could have done to make this your best camping trip ever in a post-stay or email app can generate gold. Like that's, just the way the language is framed too. Like you can, so many people, especially the KOAs will ask that NPS question, rate us. But if you ask that, sometimes that gets different answers and results, right? Than just a how would you rate us. Do we want to look at Do we want to look at what Burnout Bob says real quick? Or
I think we should just come to why don't you just admit it, Burnout Bob? You're like Clark Kent to Burnout Bob. It's just
maybe. Like it is interesting. Let's skim this really quick. So same question to Burnout Bob. You want to know what campers are talking about heading into 2025? We'll slap a squirrel in a business suit and call it a consultant because I got the data points you need and several you absolutely do not. This year is different. We're talking post-pandemic vibe, AI-generated spam email, eco, crypto, gluten-free, solar, llama-powered 2025 energy, baby. Campers are talking, and most of them are whispering into their hydro flasks like it's a secret government frequency. So here it is, straight from the fiery bowels of my delusional genius, a.k.a. what the tent trolls are whispering about, 2025 conversation data points. Digital detox, but with Wi-Fi. We want to unplug and be present in nature. What they mean is, but we better get 5 bars of Wi-Fi or I'm leaving a 1-star Yelp review with tears in my eyes.
That's truth.
Yeah, that's very true.
Reality.
What to track? Wi-Fi usage per camper, rage levels when Netflix buffers, and number of people asking for a meditation tent but using it for TikToks. That makes... Bob, he gave a pro tip too. Install Wi-Fi routers shaped like trees, confuse the hell out of everyone, and offer a Wi-Fi hide and seek as an activity.
I got to tell you, I'm all on board with number 1. I think Bob's onto something there.
Okay. Eco guilt is peaking. Campers be like, is this picnic table made from recycled cheese? Is the fire pit carbon neutral? Are these s'mores locally sourced from organic goblins? What to track? Solar panel. This is following the other 10. This is interesting, right? So it's the same database, but different framing. What to track? Solar panel usage, water refill station traffic, and how many guests lecture your staff about composting. Replace all signage with shame-free zones. Replace the pool with a pond full of kombucha and call it the fermentation station. Craving experiences, not just sites. Here we go. See, this is good advice, Scott. Well, it's good topics. How about that? We'll say that. 2025 campers want curated, meaningful, and probably bizarre activities that they can post on Instagram before pretending they were present in the moment. What to track? Activity attendance, viral post mentions, hashtag raccoon yoga 2025, and spontaneous ukulele circles. Bob's twist is host silent disco fishing tournaments. Nobody knows why. Nobody cares. It's art. Hyper cleanliness obsession is still here. People are still sanitizing everything like dirt at the campsite is going to sue them. We'll skip that one. AI paranoia and curiosity. People are weird about tech. Is the reservation system spying on me? Why did the toaster suggest I join a cult? What to track? Chatbot interactions, guest satisfaction with automation versus human contact is for sure important. So this is not bad advice, really. Like the crazy stuff at the end is a little weird AI-generated reservation names like Mr. Flamingo Refrigerator. Pro tip, hire a guy in a robot costume to answer questions at check-in. Call him CAMPER, Camper 9000. Deny he's a real person or don't. That'd be an interesting way to beta test robots eventually, right? Like hire a human and see if they get angry because it's a robot, but then take the mask off the guy. Like, I'm just kidding. I'm actually a human. Mystical escape versus apocalypse vibes. The world's still bonkers, so people want to pretend they're in a fantasy novel or training for Mad Max. What to track? D&D style LARP requests. Does anybody, you guys actually know what LARP means? I only know this from
I know this from What We Do in the Shadows. Have you ever watched that show?
I have.
No, but I know it from like is it Mythic Quest? The show on Apple TV? Anyway, but like, go ahead.
Live action role playing. LARPers. That's anyway.
Oh, right. It's a great source for food.
Right. Yeah, because they can
That's
find
right.
virgins. That's how
That's
they find
right.
virgins.
But also, like, this is not bad too, because these are small activities that could be in your town that you could attract people from who would go camping, depending on the type of LARPing they're doing, right? But like live action role playing is like people get together and reenact battles from the 1800s and all kinds of stuff, right? This is bigger than you think.
Yeah, that's technically LARP. Yep.
Pro tip is offer a choose your own apocalypse adventure trail where campers pick between options like zombie attacks, alien abductions, or HOA meetings.
Perfect for a Halloween themed weekend.
Yeah, I could get like, and there's, as crazy as that sounds, for Halloween, that's actually not a bad idea. Maybe the first two, maybe not the HOA meetings. Bonus untrackable chaos metrics. You should also track completely useless but hilarious things for brand storytelling. Of times someone tries to roast cheese, of campers who bring emotional support plants, instances of ghost sightings, especially if you have haunted porta potty number 6. That would be interesting to ask people during Halloween as an exit question. If you have like you could pretend you have a haunted bathroom. Did you see Sam or the haunted ghost? Like make up a personality, right? And that just as your exit question and just see what they say. You want something different this year, you track this wild data and you'll either improve your park operations, accidentally start a cult, or become a viral sensation known only as the campground that turned my dog into an influencer. Your move, Campfire Commander. Want me to design a spreadsheet for the students here, create signs, or build a fake AI that gives campers cryptic advice like a magic 8-ball made of trail mix? Okay, all right. So what do we want to ask AI to get good advice? What was the question that we were going to ask earlier? We were talking about it, Greg, before we went to this, finished off this discussion of a checklist. You had an idea for AI to generate something. Oh, questions that the undercover guy could ask, right?
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. We were talking about the secret shopping. Yeah.
While I do this, Scott, is there any other data that you think park owners should be paying attention
to? You see, I've been coughing all day.
I'm trying to save you here, man. I brought in a 4th guest to the podcast to save you from talking.
I don't know about Bob, but the data they should be paying attention to, I think, is whatever they can, whatever is local, whatever is happening where they want to go. What are the gas prices where you're going? I mean, I've noticed this, and anyone who travels, can, like, between here and some other places, I've seen 40-50 cent differences in the price of gas. Go on, get on Gas Buddy and figure that out. There's things like that. I mean, I would, and I know I keep saying this, I'm going to harp on it till someone stops me, and that is for campground owners to look at their own guest information, their own reservations. When are people showing up, and what is happening when they see these patterns in their visitation? It's like, if you have, for example, does visitation at a certain time, like Greg earlier, you mentioned 4th of July. So if you have a really busy 4th of July, does that mean that August is going to be slow? Or is it the opposite? Is it a harbinger for the rest of the season? If it's slow, does that mean your September, October are going to be busy? Things like that. It's like I'm, now I feel like I'm in the mode of being more internally focused. Use your data. Talk to other. Greg keeps mentioning the other campground owners. There's some campground owners out there that are really good at this stuff about using internal data. I know some folks here who do workshops with campground owners on it. On how to use your internal data, and talk to those folks, talk to those people. There's a campground manager here in Maine. She presented, I think, at the campground owners gathering in Missouri. I forget what that's called, but anyway, her name is Billy McNamara. She does Yeah, and she's going to do one, like, she's here in Maine. She's going to do one this coming weekend at the Maine Campground Owners Association meeting again. And she's a great resource. If anyone wants to talk to how she does it, she's very organized and she knows what she's talking about.
There was a couple things I asked the AI a question here. Undercover shoppers. So we'll talk about that in a second. Tariffs, real quick. Just want to point out, I don't have any other data, but they're talking already about the tech companies. The futures are dropping because they're importing all their electronics. Things like Nike and Wayfair, shoes and things like that are going to be impacted from Vietnam and stuff like that. This wasn't actually the tab I was looking at, but yeah. So just other things like that, right? Looking for alternative production of mini ovens from this, whoever this person is, Suve founder. So yeah, we're gonna be digesting this for a minute, I think. So okay, so let's go back to undercover shoppers. This is the good question, good answers, right? What are some questions I'd like to have an undercover shopper ask my guests at my campground to see how they really feel about the experience I'm providing? First impressions arrival. How was your check-in? Were the staff friendly? Was it easy to find your site? Did everything look clean and well kept when you arrived? Sites and amenities. How do you like your campsite so far? Is your site quiet enough at night? Have you tried the showers and restrooms yet? Were they clean? Is the Wi-Fi or cell service decent here? Service and staff is, have you had to talk to any of the staff? Were they helpful? Have they been around to check in or help you at all? Do you feel like they care about how your trip is going? That's interesting. That's an interesting one, right? Like that feels like that would invoke more of a deeper, interesting response, especially if you could record it or take notes. Activities and atmosphere. Are you doing any of the activities they offer here? Is this place more laid back or busy, would you say? Does it feel more family friendly or pet friendly? Pain points. Anything you wish was different? Have you run into any issues so far? What's one thing you'd change if you could? Overall satisfaction. Would you come back here again? Have you camped anywhere better recently? Do you think it's worth what you paid? I was reading articles about that too. Like, I think that's going to be a big thing here is the value prop at some of these campgrounds, especially after they've raised prices for so many years.
Absolutely. Yep.
Loyalty indicators. How'd you hear about this place? Is this your first time here? Do you come often? Have you told anyone else about this campground? So here's my question with this list. Let's say you're doing your secret shopper thing. You're taking Greg's advice. You're working with a local owner and operator who's willing to trade with you, right? Greg, do you provide this list to that person verbatim? Do you cut it down? Do you slice and dice it? Do you just say like, hey, here's some things I want to uncover and ignore a checklist? Because arguably, even though you're a park owner and you should kind of know what somebody else would want to know, you're not trained as a secret shopper. You're not thinking about this every day. So how do you make sure that experience, when done by someone who's not a pro secret shopper, uncovers is worth the time of investing that, right?
Yeah, that's the and actually, Scott, you started to say something. Do you want to say anything first before I
I was just going to say I would not advise people to read those questions.
No. Oh, no. Yeah, I don't think so either. But as a study guide, do you give it, right? Like, as
it needs to be more natural, more organic, and just more conversational. That's all.
That's it. That's exactly where I was going. Yeah, you might give them the talking points. These are the things that I'd really like to know, but you got to make sure that park owner is capable of carrying on a conversation, because that's the way to get to
and some aren't, right? Just like
yeah, you got to pick, definitely, KYP, know your personnel, and pick the right one. And if they can carry on a conversation and be relaxed and engaging, that's it. Then you've got it. Then they only need to know a couple of data points. Okay, he wants to know this, he wants to know that. I wouldn't give him a great big long. I'd give him maybe 2 or 3 things that I really wanted to know, and just have them engage in conversation. They're going to learn a whole bunch of other stuff as they engage in that conversation. As long as they hit on those couple of points, I'm happy, right? But I definitely like the question about the value prop. And what was the other one you had there that you said was really, do you feel like they care about your experience, or you care about your time?
Do you feel like they care about how your trip is going?
Great question. Yeah, great question. Because that, you want to talk about hooking somebody in. If somebody comes to my park, if I can make them feel like I genuinely, and my staff genuinely cares about their experience, they don't notice that maybe
things, right?
They don't notice all kinds of stuff. They don't notice that maybe there's some paint peeling over here, or the guy who was supposed to mow the grass here did a crap job, or he didn't do the trimming on the eastern side of the fishing pond or something. They're not going to notice any of that. The warm and fuzzies cancel all that stuff out. If you can make people feel warm and fuzzy, you have got a return customer, and you deserve them. That's the more important part.
So be cognizant of who you're hiring, right? Like, you have to have not an intuition necessarily for this, but you got to think about what you're doing. It's just like the reason that we balance so well on this show, right? Is like I ramble on about nonsense and bullshit. You guys bring intelligent conversation to the mix, and like it's a thing. So
Scott brings intelligent conversation. I just pivot.
I bring the dogs.
That's all I'm capable of. Yeah, man. I
thing.
love seeing the dogs in the background.
Ryan has a dog too. He's been showing his dog recently.
I do. It's somewhere. All right, let's wrap the show up with we'll finish out with Burnout Bob's recommendations for undercover questions, and we'll leave with some final thoughts. Are you guys ready for this?
All right.
All right. So Burnout Bob's 10 questions that you should ask undercover shoppers. So number 1 is, hey, real quick, on a scale of blissful forest elf to screaming into the void, how's your stay going? Number 2 is, if you had to name the worst part of your stay, but had to say it in the form of a country music song title, what would it be?
That's actually awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Actually, that's nice. That's creative. I actually like that.
Yep. I like that one.
Number 3 is, what's one thing you expected that hasn't happened yet? That's interesting too.
That is interesting.
He might have some more potential than we thought here.
Yeah.
That was the casual but deadly openers. Then there's the what the fuck is happening here operations check. If a friend was checking in tomorrow, what's one thing you'd warn them about? That's also good. This is like, you could give this to the undercover shopper, and this is natural conversation stuff, right? Number 5 is, on a scale of spa day to public restroom at a monster truck rally, how clean is everything around here? 6 is, you get to fire one imaginary staff member, no consequences. Who are you taking out and why? The how bad do you want to live here test. If you had to live here for 1 year, what's the first thing you change? Also a good question. These are interesting. Would you let your weird uncle come stay here without supervision? Maybe. The vibes and crystals questions. What's the vibe here? Like, if this place had a spirit animal, what would it be? And is it trying to kill us? If you could add one magical feature to the campground, no budget, what would it be? And the brutally honest ones, deploy with caution. What almost made you cancel this trip before you arrived? That's interesting, because most people would probably say nothing, right? But it'd be interesting to see what data you got.
If they say something, that actually is a good question.
It is.
It is. Yeah. It's kind of like we always used to ask the question, what keeps you awake at night? We'd ask, you know what? Here's
what I honestly think. Like, we've talked about deploying AI to cold call people. Not to cold call people, to call, and like you could have them engage in a conversation like, do you want to upgrade your amenities, or like a serious like AI like before your pre-stay, right? Pre-stay check-in, kind of like you'd send an email. But what about a post-stay check-in? Like, I think if you, obviously not Burnout Bob, but if you created someone a little bit more temperamental but fun as a personality that AI could call and engage with and ask kind of quirky questions like this to a guest, I bet you'd get some more answers than people just asking straight up boring survey questions to people, right?
Yep.
Just a little bit personality, a little bit of flair, and you could have AI just run through your list. And if you knew what it was saying and it was like toned down, right, but a little bit humorous and funny, I bet you get some interesting data. Would you recommend this place to a friend, an enemy, or your ex? 3 layers of truth, weaponized sarcasm inbound. 13, is there anything here that makes you feel like you're in a horror movie, but not in a good way? Is there a good way for being in a horror movie? I don't know. Secret spy tactic. You have the mystery shopper ask one dumb, seemingly irrelevant question. Like, do you think the firewood is emotionally available? If the bathrooms had an aura color, what would it be? And did the raccoons judge you? And then bonus, the Bobby bombshell. How could we make this the greatest campground in the world, assuming we're not already? I actually like the majority of those questions. I think they would give you better results. So
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree.
Yeah.
I agree on some. Like, you'd have to very much pick the right person to both deliver the question and to ask the question of. But there were certain people. I'm picturing certain customers I had that I actually didn't have a great relationship with, that I think I could have asked some of these questions to, and had a little bit of an icebreaker.
It might be a good way with a problem guest.
Yes.
Instead of sugarcoating things, to just go all in. And I mean, what do you got? Honestly, you don't have much to lose.
What do you have to lose? Absolutely.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, any final thoughts, guys? I think that was a pretty good show, right? Like, that was different than what we. I mean, that's for a last minute idea that we came up with Monday, right? That was fairly good. So,
I
any final
think we
thoughts?
need to stick to that. Actually, we need to be like the South Park guys, right? They typically the episodes air whatever it is Wednesday night, and they typically finish up like Wednesday morning at 9 p.m. with the they pull it all together last minute. That might be the secret
Is that
sauce.
show actually still good? Like, I don't want to talk about that.
I haven't watched it in 20 years. I don't
Neither have
know.
I. Like, I
I
keep
know.
trying to, like, once every 4 years, I'll go back and pick an episode because it's topical about some news that I'm interested in, like
Yes.
AI or politics, and I'll be like, this is not anywhere close to as funny as I thought when I was like 20.
Yeah.
So, Scott, final thoughts?
Let's just keep our nose to the ground and see what's going on. I was just reviewing the list of trails and such that are closed this year by the BLM. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think this is like, I will tell you, like, I think this episode really kind of encapsulates what I hope to accomplish with Outwire, both in like when I created it, when we created it together, but going forward is a like, here's some useful information, but here's a totally different way to think about it. And like indirectly, I think I accomplished that way more than I thought I was just going to be funny for a second with Burnout Bob. But just that reframing of the conversation, I think, is something that just we're not having and we're not hearing as a conversation in outdoor hospitality. Because not because people aren't capable, but because they're just too fucking busy running their own businesses, right?
Yep.
And they don't have time to think about that. But will you email that to us, Scott? Because we'll lose that after the meeting.
Yep, I sure will.
I'm assuming that's the links or whatever.
Yep, it's the closures. So
yeah.
I'm going to keep an eye on it.
I want to write up about that in Modern Campground too. But thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening. It was a great conversation. We will see you next week for another episode. And take care.